Hey everybody, thanks for coming. This is Kimchi Family talk number 3 again. I know a lot of you guys are friends with Dan as well and coming here to support him. This is our third talk. The first 2 were actually basketball coaches. Jonathan Yim, who was with the Blazers, and Steve Beck was our last guest. He was at Chino Hills and won a national championship. And again, this is an effort by Daniel, who started the Kimchi Express TBT squad. And really came out of our conversation about wanting to empower the next generation of Korean Americans. So a little pivot from the coaches, but we got Dan, a good friend of mine. And I'm just gonna let him tell his story, but as you guys know, if you're friends with him, you know that his energy is off the charts, and his care and heart for, you know, the people that are in the circle, the loyalty and all of that is just all transparent and all 100. But really, he has an amazing journey, and, you know, we're really honored that he normally doesn't like to put himself out like this, but, you know, this is a safe space. This is family, and we're really excited to hear him share his story and pick up a few things that maybe apply to our own journeys. So, Dan, thanks for coming. Appreciate you. Let's get it rolling. You want to say a quick hello to your family over here on there?
Yeah, my sister's on. Thank you. I see so many familiar faces and people that I don't know as well. So yeah, I just want to start by saying, like, I really appreciate everyone making the time. Like, people are busy, they got families, they got jobs, they got, you know, Duke MSU on, and people like took time out of their day to like just come hear me talk, which is kind of weird. But at the same time, when I was talking to Marshall and Daniel, if this can help just one person, like that's kind of like why I'm doing it. So not that my story or I'm like super special, but I just been really blessed to like meet tons of people, especially on this call even. I see Pat Cusinelli. What's up, Pat? Good seeing you, boss. I haven't seen you in years, but Pat and I used to work at a company called Arteriocyte, which I'll touch on later. But yeah,
good to see you, man.
Good to see you, man. I'm just super humbled and like a little bit speechless that like actually like 30 people showed up to hear me talk. So appreciate everyone. But yeah, so I'll kind of start at the beginning. So it's all kind of part of my narrative. But I was born here in the US. I was born in Texas. My dad was getting his master's there, so I was born in Texas. And I moved to Michigan pretty quickly. I spent up till the age of 10 in Michigan, so I became a huge Detroit Pistons fan. Isaiah Thomas was like my favorite player. The Bad Boy Pistons were like just everything to us. And then I moved to Korea with my parents because my dad took a job back out there, and then spent a lot of my formative years in Korea at Seoul International School. And that's where like I used basketball to like make friends. I was like kind of like what I like to think like the OG like group of guys that like waited online for sneakers in Korea. So that was kind of like a small like subculture. Like there are literally probably only 10 of us waiting online at the time, but it was like still a way to get J's. And then I came back to the US and was going to do the very, very like stereotypical Korean thing and try to be a doctor. So trying to make my parents proud. So I ended up in this small school called Case Western Reserve University in Cleveland, Ohio. And I went there because like a family friend's son went there and got into a good medical school. So my parents sent me there and got a scholarship and stuff like that. So I ended up there. And that's where like, again, like my story, the common thread of it is I've just been really blessed, like meeting the right people at the right time. So when I was at Case Western, I organized our campus basketball game. So we basically had like a group of 20 guys that could like really hoop. And like if one scrub like was on the court, like it just wasn't fun because like we just attacked that one player. And so we had this like pretty exclusive list. And then there's this guy, this older white gentleman who just came like every other week. And his name is Don Brown, and it's where I met how I met Pat. But anyway, he's not as Pat's laughing, he's not a good hooper.
No.
Yeah, great guy.
Shouldn't be on the court by any means.
Yeah.
Makes sense he snuck in there though.
Yeah, really nice guy. But I just kind of like, my thing is like, I have a genuine curiosity just to get to know people and hear their stories, and, you know, and he was a really nice guy, set great picks, like, you know, like just did all the little dirty things on the court. So anyway, he was starting a small like med device company, and it was called Arteriosite. And I know Daniel sent out this promo thing that like made it sound like I invented this thing. Like he gassed me up. Like basically Don was trying to like buy this business from a big, huge med device company, one of the biggest ones in the world, called Medtronic. And they had this therapy called Platelet Rich Plasma. Basically, it's called PRP. It accelerates healing in sports injuries. It's what Kobe got in his knee in Germany years back. And so before med school, I was just like, yo, like, I just want to like learn about business. Like, what is this? And he was like, yeah, like, I can't pay you, but like, if this deal goes through, I'll pay you retroactively, and maybe you like work for me. And so like that summer, I did all this like work. Like we basically rented out like this tiny lab bench in a lab. And it was just me and him jamming on stuff. And lo and behold, like basically he raised a ton of money. We bought this asset from Medtronic, and then like he hired me and 2 other people. So it was a company of 4 people. And like good fortune came to us, and basically like the first athlete that got the therapy was the Korean American football player Hines Ward. And he got it right before the Super Bowl. So years back when they played the Cardinals in the Super Bowl, he sprained his MCL before the Super Bowl. That's probably like a 6-week injury. And he played 2 weeks later. And then it was like Andrea Kramer or whoever it was, like sideline report. She was like, yeah, I got this like cutting edge therapy called PRP. And Don's this type of dude, he'll like pick up the phone and he'll just give you something like completely like outrageous to do. And he'll be like, yo, Dan, did you see that? Are you watching the Super Bowl? I'm like, of course I'm watching the Super Bowl. It's like, I need you to get Hines Ward on the phone for me by Wednesday. And he hangs up. I'm like, what the heck? Anyway, so like I start like researching all these phone numbers, and then I get to the office on Monday, start picking up the phone, just cold calling people. And I knew he was half Korean. So at the end of each message, I would say like, oh, hey, by the way, I'm Korean. And I like literally hung up that way. So fast forward a few days, this woman calls me. She's like, hey, I'm calling from the Pittsburgh Steelers. I'm from like PR. I have this number. It's Hines Ward's agent. Can you call him? And this was like pre-LinkedIn, so I couldn't like stalk him. But his name was Andrew Ree. And like I looked him up online, and it looked like he was a lawyer. And so anyway, I get on the phone with him, and I'm just like telling him my story and about our company and about the therapy and blah, blah, blah. And obviously he knew about it because he's Hines' guy. And I kept calling him Hyung, which is like older brother in Korean. And at the end of the call, he's just like, yo, dude, like, I just want to say it warms my heart every time you say Hyung. And so because of that, I'm going to get you Hines Ward on the phone for you. And so basically we had this call with the board and like my boss and Hines Ward. And long story short, we couldn't sign him because he was asking for too much money. But it was just kind of like one of those, like, that story of me landing in that job was just like, it was my genuine curiosity about this random dude, super nice guy. Obviously I was super nice to him back. And like that job took me, I worked there for 7 years. And actually that job took me back to Korea, and I had a pretty big job to do. Like I basically started and ran our Asia office. And so, I mean, like to be 20, I think I was like 24 with a biology degree, to be out in Korea, like flying to like all those countries in Asia, trying to like sell and start an office. Like it was just an amazing opportunity. Yeah. And so, were you gonna say something, Marshall?
No, I want you to keep going, but so, this is a question that comes up a lot. What did your parents think about it when you went from to that little deal?
When I told my parents I was going to make $27,000 and work for a company they never heard of on a lab bench with 4 people, like my mom cried, like legit cried. And my dad kind of like sat there quietly, and he was just like, he just kind of like didn't say much actually. I actually don't remember exactly what my dad did. I do remember my mom like crying. And like, it was just like one of those things, and they didn't really realize what I was doing. They're like, you just have to go to med school. You have to go to med school. And I remember they were kind of like, they felt like, oh, okay, I guess he's going to be okay when I came back to Korea. Cause like I came back, I was making like really good money. The company paid for a car, which was like a really nice car. And so they're like, oh, okay, like, and I'm going on these business trips, right? And like, I'm coming back and like all happy because like I closed the deal or whatever. And so like, oh, I guess like he's going to be okay. But then I promised my parents I'd like try to go to grad school. And so that's when I applied to go to business school. And I think that's when my parents were like, okay, he's going to be okay. Because like when I got into business school, and my sister's listening to this, like my mom cried again. My dad was like really happy, obviously.
Tears of joy. Yeah.
Tears of joy.
Yeah.
And relief, probably. Relief. Like, okay, he's going to be all right.
Yeah.
But anyway, then my story goes back to the States. So I'm in Boston. And like there's these people that come in and they basically talk and they say things like, hey, like you should just like go after like your true passion. Like, hey, like business school is kind of like you're paying, you know, tuition for like career insurance and all this stuff. So I felt like super kind of like empowered to be like, you know what, like I'm gonna do something I love, like basketball or Nike. And so I collected tons of shoes by then. I was hooping in tournaments, any tournament I can play in. Like, yeah, it was just like those two things were kind of life. And so like, I guess like the second part of the story is like when I met this guy named Rich Cho. So I don't know if people have heard of Rich Cho, but he was the first Asian American GM in all major league sports. I know we just had that woman who became GM for the Marlins, but Rich was the only guy. And there's this thing called the MIT Sports Analytics Conference. And I was there just like as a student, kind of trying to look for a job. I was kind of waiting to hear back from Nike, but I was just there as like a fan because I like GMs are walking around, athletes are walking around, and I see Rich Cho, and it's so funny thinking about it. But like I see Rich Cho, and I'm like, oh, hey, Rich, I'm a huge fan. Like, you know, blah blah. Like, can I just get a picture with you? And he's like, yeah, like of course. So we have this picture together, and then he just like starts like asking me questions. Like he's like, oh, hey, what are you doing here? I'm like, oh, well, I'm a student. I'm getting like a business degree. Like, and I'm like, he's like, oh, cool. Like, you know, how long you been in Boston? Blah, blah. And I'm like, yeah. So we just start talking. And for me, like, I knew a little bit about him and I knew that he loved food. So I was like, yo, like, where are you going to go for food in Boston? And he's like, I don't know, like, what recommendations do you have? So like, I was like, okay, I got you. So I like started telling him all this stuff. And we started talking about basketball. Then we started talking about like the draft and all this stuff. And I like look at my watch and it was like 45 minutes. And I'm like, this guy's probably really busy. So I was like, hey, Rich, like, don't let me hold you. Like, if you need to go, like, please go do your thing. He's like, no, it's cool. And he like leaned up against the wall. So I'm like, cool. So I just kept talking to him. And then at the end, he was like, hey, like, what are you doing for the summer? Like, you said you're waiting for Nike. I'm like, yeah. And he's like, okay, well, if you're interested, you should email this guy. And he gives me like this email. And so like, I get back home, I email him right away. Don't hear from him. Like for 2 months, don't hear from him. And then like 2 months later, this random guy emails me and he's like, hey, your resume was chosen out of like all these applicants. You're like one of the 5 finalists and we're going to start the interview process. So I was like, oh my God, crazy, cool. So the interview was basically what Daniel started this session off with, which was basically 33 rounds of 30-minute interviews where they basically name an athlete or basketball player, an NBA player, and you have to like say where they played in college, say where they play now, and like a quick line about their game. So like round 1 went through, like it was super easy. It was like Steve Nash, like Nick Young, Enes Kanter, and all this stuff. Round 2 was like a little bit harder. And I got to the final round and it was like 10 minutes of that. And then it was like 20 minutes of like kind of like sharing kind of like your philosophy on like how to build an NBA franchise. And so obviously it's like Charlotte. So I'm like, you know, they're not going to sign like a big splash free agent. Like you have to build through the draft and yada, yada. And I kind of gave them a spiel. But even in that, like I was just trying to like show them a little bit of my personality, which is kind of like happy-go-lucky, optimistic, like I can be funny. Like, so for example, like Nick Young, I kind of blanked on that one. I was like, well, I know he plays for USC. He was with the Sixers. All I know is that he just takes terrible ass shots. And like the whole room started laughing. And so I think they got a feel for like, okay, I'm not like just like this dude who, you know, like really loves the game and like is kind of like, you know, whatever, like nerdy or whatever. They like, because everyone says, oh, I love basketball, but like that's their way of like trying to prove and show it. So long story short, I was super duper lucky to get that internship. So I like borrowed a friend's car, drove down to Charlotte. It was an unpaid internship. So the NBA does not pay. So I was paying parking at the arena. I sold 2 pairs of shoes to pay for rent. Like it's not glamorous. I was in the office by like 6. You have to be the first one in, the last one out. I was probably working from like 6 to midnight. I was trying to sneak in workouts. But it was really cool though. Cause like not to name drop, but like Jordan's son, Michael Jordan's son was like interning with us. So like Jeffrey and I would go out and get shots up, and then Michael Jordan's infamous brother, Larry Jordan, the one that beat him all the time, his office was right next to ours. And like, he just kind of like liked me. Cause like, I was just like, I don't know, he just liked me. And so he would like take me out and like, we go shoot around, and like, he was my hall pass. Like if the other guys saw me do that, the other guys would kind of like be like, yo, you should be doing that stuff. So, it was an amazing experience, and I got like great stories from those times. Like just the first time I met MJ, things like presentations I gave. Like I ended up at Michael Jordan's house to watch, I think it was game 6 of the NBA Finals or game 5. So it's just like a dream come true. A lot of people wonder like, hey, so like, why didn't you pursue that? And like, cause it's like a dream job, and it really is. I still think about it to this day. I still think about it. And I still try to stay in touch with a lot of people that like I worked with and met in that short time. And the reality is like, so it's unpaid internship. The offers that you get back coming to like basically start is like either unpaid or like you're working like hourly salaries or like with stipends. And what that means is like, hey, you get $100, you have to go scout this, you get like transportation, but you get $100, or let's just say it's like $500. You have to pay for like hotel, food, but you get to keep whatever you like have. And so it's just like, it's just really hard to make a living. And at the time, like I was 30 or 31. So I was like thinking about like, oh, I gotta get married at some point. I turned down an internship that was going to pay me like 20 grand, I think, or no, like might have been like 30 or 40 grand over the summer.
For the summer.
Yeah.
Wow.
So like just to work for that experience, and I wouldn't trade it for the world. I would have done it 10 times over again. But to like bet my life on that just felt like a little bit too risky. And then I was telling Marshall and Daniel, like, and for the Hoop fans out there, like if you think about the NBA draft, so the year before Charlotte had the worst record, they should have gotten the number 1 pick. 2012 draft. Does anyone know who the number 1 pick was? It was
AD.
Anthony Davis. Yeah, it was AD. And then Charlotte fell to number 2, and they got MKG, who like had a broken jump shot. Like it just didn't work out. Then 2013, I think they were tied for their worst record, and we got the number 4 pick. And so again, like luck, like those ping pong balls have to drop your way. Then the year after, if you think about the year after, like it was a Joel Embiid draft. So if you get Embiid and his foot breaks, like as a GM or front office staff, like you're screwed. So like, that's why Sam Hinkie's like process is actually like makes a lot of sense, because you just want as many shots on goal. So anyway, long story short, basically I decided not to do that just because like it was just really risky. I felt like to put my livelihood or to like bet my livelihood on that. But it's like a weird thing, because like I really don't want to discourage anyone from like going after that dream. I just didn't have the balls to. Like, did I believe that maybe I could have been like a pretty decent GM? Like maybe, but then I was Asian. I didn't play pro ball. Like there's so many things stacked up against me. And so that's when I kind of decided like, hey, it was awesome. It was a great experience. Like I wouldn't trade it for the world. If circumstances were different, maybe I would try to do it. But like I made the decision to like recruit for Nike. So
to recruit for Nike or to pursue
To recruit for
Pivot.
Nike. Yeah. Like here's another like I just want like everyone to know that like I've been super blessed. I've like, had like amazing jobs, amazing opportunities. Like I failed like many a times. And one of my first failures was like I didn't get a Nike internship. So like actually this is kind of probably news to if there's Nike folks on this thing. I see like Jamar is one of my buddies, Jamar is on this, but like anyway, and Alex Pinchuk's on this too. But when we interviewed for Nike internship, they basically sent you this prompt, like this website, and it basically threw up a prompt, and your camera would turn on, and you would have like 3 minutes to answer the question. And what I realized, and I didn't really prepare for it, is that like I rely so much on people's like emotional intelligence, or excuse me, I rely on my emotional intelligence and people's like nodding or people's like smiling to be like, okay, like I'm saying the right thing. I should keep going. And so anyway, I had kind of like one of those, like, I couldn't get my words out. Like I saw the ticker go and I answered the question, but I had nothing more to say. And I felt like I had to fill up the time. It was a train wreck. Another funny part of that story is like the head recruiter like really liked me and she really wanted to help me. So she gave me a second crack at it too. And I still didn't get it. So like,
Come on,
okay,
Dan.
like, yeah, I know.
You gotta come through.
You gotta keep at it. But I will say, so when I had my full-time interview, I had like an MJ flu moment, no lie. So my buddy Jamar, who's on this call, so we got flown in from Boston to Portland. We land at like midnight and we're both hungry. So we decided to go to McDonald's across the street. So I go to McDonald's, I eat this filet-o-fish. It was bomb. And then the next morning I wake up and I'm like, man, I just don't feel good. Like, just don't feel good. They bring you to campus. It's like this beautiful campus. I'm just so excited to be on campus, but then I'm feeling so sick. And basically how the interviews work is they put you in this huge auditorium type meeting room, and then they put up like these like curtains, like voting booth curtains. And basically you have, I think it was like 30-minute interviews where you have 30-minute interview and then they like blow a horn and then you rotate, blow a horn, rotate. But then you get like a 5-minute break in between, right? So like I go, and just as it's about to start, I feel really sick. So I go, the horn blows, I go into my first interview. I just like MJ moment, MJ flu game. Like I just try to focus in and I actually like get through it. And then the horn rings, I come outside and I literally keel over and I'm like, just like sitting in the corner, and then go in 30 minutes, happens again. 30 minutes happens again. And I was super blessed. Like I'm religious. So like God bless me, because most people I think had 5 interviews. I only had 4. And by the 4th one, when it ended, that's when I started throwing up. So I started throwing up for like, I think it was like 10 or 12 hours straight. So like after all the interviews, you get a campus tour. I barely finished the campus tour. Yeah. Then you get to go to the employee store. And I go to the employee store. I'm so sick.
You're still wet. Hold on a minute.
Yeah.
For all the non-Nike folks, that's
I yacked in the bathroom. I yacked in the bathroom, went to the employee store, grabbed 2 things, like a running shirt and like a pair of shoes, and then I asked for an Uber back to the hotel. Wow. But I was lucky enough to like actually it's another story and kind of like luck. The first guy who interviewed me was this guy named Eugene Isaki. It's like a Japanese American guy, and he's still my mentor like to this day. He asked me one question. He put his book down and he said, let's just talk. And like, I think he's the one. He still doesn't admit to this day, but like, I think he's the one that basically was like, okay, we got to hire this guy. So.
What was the question? You don't remember? You were so sick. We're going to have Eugene come on and tell us.
Yeah. I don't know, actually. I don't remember the story. I don't remember what the question was.
Do you remember how you answered it, or the spirit of it? What came across?
I think it was just like, I think it was around like, why do you want to come to Nike? And like, I just had a really authentic answer to that. And for those who are interested, so like for me, like I didn't answer it this way, but like if I were to answer it now, like I love sport. I love like retail. I love shopping. And I love product. Like I've been a sneakerhead since as long as I can remember. Like, I'm the guy that smells a shoe. Like, I can't wait to open up the box, peel back the tissue paper, and just like look at the shoe. Like, I just love that. I have tons of shoes. And I was telling him the story of how I got my first pair of shoes from my grandma. So my grandma lived in Korea. She sent me a pair of like Air Tech Challenge 4s. It's the Andre Agassi shoe. And basically, it's a super expensive shoe at the time. And I just like didn't wear it because I didn't want to like crease it or get it dirty. So I like left it on my like my closet top. And then, you know, you like in elementary school, you like grow out of it so fast.
Yeah.
So like barely I think I wore it twice. And I told him that story and how that got me into sneakers, and like how I used basketball and sneakers to meet friends, like when I was in Korea, and how I still collect shoes to this day, and how I learned to cut my own hair to like save up money to buy shoes and things of that nature. So I think he's like, okay, I got it. Which is so important, like like maybe like an understated thing about interviews is like, a lot of times if you're at the point where you're getting an interview, like they've deemed you to be smart enough or have the skill set to do the job. It's more of like a personality test. And like, can I work with this person for like 12 hours? Like, is this person going to be a good teammate? Is this person going to like put the team before his or herself? Like all the sport, you know, lingo that you want to talk about, like that holds true in tons of like interviews. But yeah, so my first job at Nike wasn't like wasn't what I dreamed of. Like, so there's like Nike campus, and then there's like these off buildings around campus. So I ended up in one of the off buildings. So each building at Nike is named after an athlete. I worked in the South Platte building. They couldn't even give us a proper name. And I was working in licensing. For example, like I covered sunglasses and glasses. And like we partnered with like one of the world's leading glasses companies. And like, you can just imagine like sneakerhead, like so pumped to be on Nike, working on South Platte, like no offense to South Platte, working on licensing. One thing I will say is like, I'm a pretty like optimistic guy. And so like, I just try to make the most out of like each opportunity. And so like in that, like I got close to like this old time Nike guy who was a sales guy. He was like, I'll take you under my wing and just teach you and introduce you to people. And then he was like, yo, like, you have any good ideas and stuff like that? So I pitched Kevin Durant eyewear. So when Kevin Durant gave his MVP speech, he wore those glasses. I was like, yo, we could like totally like brand this KD eyewear. And like, actually like we got it through. And so there's KD eyewear. So I actually got to like meet KD and LeBron in like my first month, which was like kind of like super lucky there again. And then like at Nike, you change jobs every 2 to 3 years, and you usually can't change a job within 2 years. But my boss's boss, the VP at the time, her name's Carrie Solo, she's like amazing lady. She was just like, hey, like, I know this isn't exactly where you want to be. So I kind of want to like allow you to spread your wings, as she said. So she kind of gave me the blessing to kind of like look outside a little bit. And a buddy of mine who I met hooping actually at Nike, he was like, hey, like the OG Kitchen, like Tinker Hatfield and like Eric Avar, they're hiring like what we call a strat planner. Like there's kind of like their business right hand. And that's how it was told to me. And I was just like, oh my God, like that's like the dream. And so I like started networking, and I just like, I think like that's one thing I've been like really blessed with, is just like getting to meet and know and build relationships with people like pretty quickly. And so like I was able to like meet a bunch of these like VPs and decision makers. And over the course of like, I want to say that interview process was like 3 months. And I think I had like 9 different interviews or 12 different interviews. I was lucky enough to get that job. And the last interview was like super stressful, because it's every single VP from that team was sitting around a table, and they basically just ask you all these questions. And the admin, the main admin was there as well. And like, lesson to the young folks here, like admins are like super duper like powerful, influential people. Like they they will get asked like, hey, what'd you think about that candidate? And like, for me, like, luckily, like, my parents ingrained in me in a very, very young age, you got to treat everybody the same. Like, everybody is the same. No one is better than another person. So like, I was super nice to that admin. And like, later on, I found out, man, she has so much power. And she told me like later on, she's like, you're my favorite candidate. Like, cause you were like super nice to everybody you met. And so, yeah, like, I was lucky enough to get that job. I did that job for 4 years. So that's where, I mean, it kind of is like, you know, the reality is you're kind of like their right-hand person. It's kind of like you make the job what you want it to be. Like, that's a cool thing about Nike. So, like, I just probably leaned in. I worked for this guy named Michael Donahue, who's like probably one of the best bosses I've had. Like, he's amazing dude, just like amazing man, like family man, amazing like leader. Then like apparently like MJ called Tinker and was like, you gotta do one for Carolina. And I was like, I got an idea. Like, I had another idea ready for him. It was called like the birth of Jordan. And it was the 35th anniversary of MJ hitting the shot against Georgetown. And in interviews, he always says like, that's when I became Michael Jordan. And so he was wearing a Converse Pro leather. And so basically that's the Converse logo basically fading out into the Jumpman. And then this was like the short, and then that was the year they won the NCAA championship. So this was the logo of the shorts that he was wearing in 82. And then this was in 2017. So yeah, it was pretty cool.
So again, you know, Dan, when you and I and Daniel were planning out, we said, you know, quick journey. We were thinking 20 minutes. We're 45 minutes in, and we could easily go another 45 minutes. And for the people who did tune in, I mean, I think half of you guys are family anyway, so I don't know what kind of questions you would ask in public other than embarrassing ones. But I just want to take a few minutes and then just ask you a couple of big picture questions. And then we'll just kind of turn it over to just whatever questions that people might have. And you can show us more shoes, and then we can delete them. I keep hearing, obviously, you saying I was lucky, I was charmed, I was blessed. And again, you touched on a little bit, you did fail a lot, but you know, as a coach, again, we always say, you know, great players make their own luck, right? And so I think a lot of us heard you took initiative, you're super relational. I think some of the big words that I took out as I was taking notes is you organize pickup lines, and you still do that today. Like, you're an organizer, you bring people together, and I'm sure many on the screen can attest to that. You're curious. And then, but also at the other end, like, you had this crazy thing that you thought a pair of shoes could bring together Jalen and, you know, Chris's beef. Like, you're the super big dreamer, but you also made very practical decisions along the way. And so along all those like decision points, like, what do you lean on? Is it on your guts? Is it, you know, do you make a spreadsheet? Like,
Yeah.
What is it? You know, how do we get more granular there?
That's a great question. I do have like a little bit of a process when it comes to that type of stuff, like decision making. So like, one is like, I'm a huge gut person for sure. Like, I rely on my gut a ton when, like, after I do some of like the pre-work to that. So like, I write a lot of stuff down. So like, any big decision, I just try to write stuff down, like pros and cons, and like, you know, and I always think about like what my North Star is. Like, you know, one of the things for me, at least in this season of my life, is to like make sure that like I have good work-life balance. Like, because I just had a kid, and like, truth is, like, I don't get to organize as much as I'd like to anymore. I used to do that before I had those types of responsibilities, but like, so like, I always try to make sure that whatever decision I'm making is aligned to like my North Star. And what that means is like, sometimes it's the job that doesn't pay the most. Sometimes it's a job that's not the promotion. Sometimes it's a job that like I don't want to do, but it's stuff that like is gonna like at least get me closer to like what that end goal is. And then the other big thing, dude, is like, I like ask for a lot of people's opinion. Like, I have tons of mentors, and I even ask like friends and people like I mentor, like, yo, what do you think? Like, I see like JPEG's on the call, like he's like been my little brother for so long. Like we talk about this type of stuff all the time, like all the time. And it goes both ways. And so like for me, like, you know, like a good decision is like collecting as much data as you can, right? And data is basically like people's opinion, like especially mentors, people who are older who have like made mistakes before you have, like you should ask them for like what their opinion is, because you know, if I was young, I probably would have taken jobs that just like pay the most. And I always tell people like coming up in their careers, like don't take the job, especially early on. Do not take the job that pays the most. Take the job that's going to give you the most amount of responsibility and like most amount of like experiences and exposure. Like I stress that like so much, because if it's like a salary difference of like 50K versus 55K, that 5K difference is literally a drop in the bucket once you are working in the workforce for like 10 to 15 years. Like it's nothing. It's literally nothing. I know it sounds like a lot of money, and I'm not trying to be like, oh, like I want to be like respectful to people who where that's a lot of money, because it is, but in the scheme of like someone's career, like you're better off taking a job that doesn't pay as much if it gives you more opportunity. So long story short, like gather a lot of data, definitely a gut person, just like using sounding boards, asking people, write stuff down, lists, all that.
It does touch on a little bit like your passion for basketball. Obviously, this is we're basketball hoops people first here at Kimchi Family / Kimchi Express. But we talked about that a little bit. How had you grown up here versus growing up in Korea, where you got to play organized basketball, you got to be pretty good, where you found that confidence and identity, like that took you on to these other places, you know?
Yeah.
Do you think back on that time at all and think now and say, hey, time to get back to my roots, or time to, that's where again a certain amount of passion came out? But
yeah, the pull to Korea or back to Asia is like family is one of them. And then like I think I'd be more comfortable as like a leader, like I'd just be more sure of myself. Like I'm not sure if people are familiar with like the imposter syndrome, but it's basically this thing that like you always feel like you're not good enough, and like you're always like doubting yourself. And I think I would, and it's imposter syndrome in my opinion is like it's a great thing if you can harness it, because it'll motivate the hell out of you. But then it's like a really dangerous thing, because if it spins out of control, you can like go into like a really insecure place. And so I think if I stayed here, there might be a little bit of that. The reality is like going back to my faith, like I do feel like God will open a door or close a door and like guide me to where I'm supposed to go. And like, honestly, that's kind of how I came here, like how I got to this spot right now. And so like, I probably at the end of the day will rely on that to like basically guide the steps. Like who knows, like my parents might move back to the States, and then there is no draw to go back to Korea. But like, I think something like that. Yeah.
But you're a dad now too. Is that the idea of your son getting to kind of have the kind of childhood that you did? You know, you were born when you moved to Korea when you were 10. Does that appeal to you? Does it also does that factor into part of your North Star as well? Being a great dad, being a great husband, and
like I really want to make sure that like he's in touch with his Korean like heritage and roots. And but I also want him to hoop. But you promised that you're going to coach him and he's going to be starting point guard for LO, or when you're like the head coach for the Blazers or something.
Now, so yeah. We'll set at the minimum. I'll be out there teaching them a few things, but
for sure.
No, it's again, for everybody, like I don't want to inject myself into these conversations much, because it's so much about Dan, but even our previous guest, Steve, who won the national championship, you know, he talks so much about the importance of mentors. And John Yim, who was our first guest, you know, so like even for Steve, the first Asian American, whatever title you want to put it to, like the National High School Coach of the Year, right? John Yim was like the first Korean American working in the NBA on the coaching staff, and he talked about an imposter syndrome. So I guess I want to make sure everybody gets a chance to ask their questions and look at shoes. But the last thing I guess I would ask you is, what part of your Korean identity your kimchi eating, bulgogi, kalbi eating Korean identity, you know, how do you bring that out in a space like Nike? Obviously that's going
Yeah.
to lend itself to that, or you know, the Jordan 3s and the Soul Jordans that you came out with, or you were
Yeah.
instrumental in making happen. Yeah, how do you bring that out? How do you let
Yeah.
people, you know, see who you
That
are?
that for me is like just who I am. Like I had a Korean flag stitched to my backpack when I was in college. Like
Mm-hmm.
the Korean, like I have so much Korean pride. Like Young
Mm-hmm.
Ho Koo, like being the points leader in the NFL, like love that. If there's a if and I think like to your North Star question too, to tie it to that, like at the end of the day, if I like help like other not only Korean, but like other like young people, like, you know, in any way, like small ways. It's not like I'm like this big person. So like if I can help them get a job or make the right decision or, you know, something like that, like to me, that's actually what's actually really fulfilling.
Well, Dan Sunwoo. Hey, by the way, I mean, again, you have such a unique journey. I think some of it, like, I think about your name because I struggle with that. I'm like, wait, this guy doesn't have a you don't have a typical journey career, to be honest with you, and you don't have a typical Korean name situation. So, can you fill us in on what's going on there? What does your name mean? Why did your parents or grandparents name you, you know,
Yeah.
give you your
Oh man.
name, and then we'll turn it over to everybody, turn it loose to
Dude,
everybody else.
I feel weird because I talked about this Korean pride, but I kind of forgot what the hanja of my name
Oh,
means.
come on.
But yeah, I have a rare last name. It's a 2-syllable last name, which is like pretty rare. I think there's 3 of them in Korea. There's Namgung, Taka, and Sunwoo. And so it's a pretty rare last name. A lot of people think I'm like trying to be cool and use my Korean name as my last name, but and it also kind of bothers me when people call me like, but like use my last name as my first name and vice
Yeah.
versa. Like,
All right.
but anyway, yeah, Sunwoo is my last name. My Korean name is Hyun.
Chun.
Yeah, I know what the hanja is. I just forgot what it means. It's Ojuri Hyun, but I forget what it
Okay.
means.
And does your son have a Korean name?
Yeah, Young. Yeah,
What's the
aka Young King, as my friends call him.
Hyun and Young?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, hey, my sister
Nice.
just told me it means wise. Hyun
Oh,
means
thank God.
wise.
Thank you. Yeah. Yeah. Leave it
Yeah,
to the sisters to save the day.
yeah,
Means
yeah, for
wise.
sure.
Well, awesome. On that note, thank you for sharing all your wisdom with young and old in the audience here. And Daniel Chun, I guess we'll turn it over to some Q&A, huh?
Yeah, let's get some Q&A going. Before we do that, though, I do have one question myself. Um, as we're on this Korea topic, and you know, we're here, and we can't really avoid the name of this whole kind of series, Kimchi Family, right? And just the opportunity to, you know, showcase, you know, Dan Sunwoo and his journey, and just even having Marshall to facilitate this conversation. Like, really, this isn't really like a, you know, Korea versus the world type of thing, but honestly, like, this is awesome to have because personally for me growing up, you know, I've never really had this in terms of having older figures in the sports space in just awesome positions, being able to, you know, help out the younger generation and have that, you know, that hyung 동생 type of personality, right? Or that relationship. So with that being said, I mean, personally, like where I live right now here in Southern California, it's like, it's basically Korea 2.0. So even in my neighborhood right now, I kid you not, 95% of my neighborhood is legit Korean. But what's weird is what just dawned on me actually this past week is Koreans, for some reason, man, I don't know what it is, but we're very reluctant to help each other out. Like, we're walking around the neighborhood, we don't even say hi. We just look at each other, stare at each other like jeroba, and that's really it. And we're always like looking to compete against one another, right? You open a restaurant, I'm gonna open a restaurant right across the street and try to beat you out. I don't know where that's coming from, but we really want to kind of change that step by step. And so all that is to say is that kind of leads me to this question, right? As we go and as we learn about more of our Korean heritage, and as you touched on, like, you want your son to understand like Korean culture and that heritage too. What part of you being Korean has helped you to be in this position right now? And, you know, there's so many times that we say like, yeah, Koreans are too timid, you know, focusing on the negative sides of being Korean. But what are some of the positives that you see about being Korean that has helped you to be in the spot that you're in right now, and then lead us into that AJ3 Seoul shoe
Yeah.
that we're going to talk about?
Yeah. I mean, hey, like honestly, like I'll help anybody. Like, you know, I was chopping up with Kirill before he got here. Like he's not Korean, like, you know, like he was a young, humble, hungry guy. And I'm like, dude, like I want to help you. Like, how can I help you? Um, and there's like other people, like some of like the mentees I have at Nike, like they're black, they're white. Like I'll, for me, like I'll help anybody who like kind of has like similar values as me, which is like being like, who will work hard, who will be humble, who will be like nice, and who will pay it forward. Like that's an important thing. Cause like honestly, like all of us, we don't get to where we are like without help, whether it's help from our parents or like people that we've looked up to, or people who have given us a shot, whether we know it or not. Like being appreciative and knowing that like, oh, I don't get that job unless that person saw something in me over other people. So I think that like, it's just like super important to like always be like grateful, like, you know, just be grateful, like of all the opportunities that we had. And then the Korean thing, like, man, for me, like, I don't know, it's given me a little bit of like, you know, I don't know, there's tons of like Asian Dans, but like in college, people call me Korean Dan. So like, it's kind of like part of my identity. Um, I've been very like, it's just a part of who I am. And I think like the values of being Korean are to be like respectful, to always think about other people before yourself, um, to be polite, like all that type of stuff. I think like was ingrained in me like pretty early on. Then I think like people like honestly like they just like really like appreciate that. The last thing is like, you know, like Koreans are like, you know, they want you to have like high EQ or like nunchi. And like it's just being aware of like people in around you, like surrounding in like in a meeting room. If someone's like feeling down, like, yo, like everything good? Like how's everything? Like what's up? Or like I have your friends, like, you know, like you don't hear from a friend and checking in on them, like that type of stuff. Because the world is small. Like, you know, even in job when you're looking for jobs, like you'll be surprised, especially with like LinkedIn and social media that way. Like people, it's so easy to pick up the phone and be like, oh, that person knows that person. Like, yo, tell me more about Dan. Like, what's he like? And like, it should be like, for me, I hope it's like, yo, he's like a really good dude. Like he'll work hard and he's like a really good dude. And like, for me, if that's like what people get from that, like that's all that really matters.
Dope. And that leads me into the shoe. Do you have the shoe, the
Oh
AJ3?
yeah. I do have the shoe. It is yeah, I am. It's I get sheepish kind of talking about it, but it's something I am really really proud of because Korea has never been celebrated like Tokyo in the sneaker world. So the genesis around it was, again, like I try to find like timely reasons, because like at Nike you want to pair product with like a great sport moment. And so it was the 30th anniversary of the 1988 Seoul Olympics, and then the Winter Olympics were about to start. And 1988 was also the year that MJ jumped from the free throw line in AJ3s. And it was the first shoe that Tinker designed. And like, I just felt like the stars aligned. I mean, just think about it. Like I was like, that's where you can quickly be like, oh, like, yeah, I designed the shoe, but like, dude, like, I don't know, for me, God created that moment for me to be in that job at that moment, like, you know, all that. So anyway, the inspiration is basically the Korean flag, which I think is like a beautiful flag. And so white is like a really important color and in like in Korea, as well as like the flag. And so the Korean flag, basically the Taeguk mark, this is kind of paying homage to the Taeguk mark. Actually, this was the first shoe that Tinker gave me design feedback, and I kind of was like, no, I really want to keep it this way, because in the other shoes, like the True Blues, this was color block blue. In the regular cements, this is color block black. and then there's a red one as well. And I was just like, he was like, you should do a color block there. And I was like, no, like the inspiration is the flag and I want to keep it all white. And he was like, okay, cool. And then, yeah, we have Seoul in like very authentic Korean letters. It's not like just Comic Sans in English. And then this is 화합과 전진, which is basically harmony and progress, which was the motto of the '88 Olympics. And then actually this one's a cool pair because I had Tinker sign it for me. And funny story, he asked me to sign the other pair and I was like, I'm not ruining the shoe with my ugly ass signature on it. So yeah, and actually what's cool is actually these are being displayed in Korea in the first Jordan only door in Korea, which is cool. So
That's great.
Yeah.
That's
yeah,
awesome,
it's a dream come true, man. I was like, oh, real quick, cool story. Like I used to wait online, like I said, like for Jordans, and the guy that used to kind of like hook me up on the side, he was waiting out in line for these shoes, and like basically the Korea team took me around to meet all the consumers, and he was the first person in line, and he remembered me, and I was like looking for him in every single line. It was like a cool moment to like meet him. Yeah,
That's awesome.
Yeah, I mean, stories like that is just it's unreal, right? And I mean, we've got a few moments. I know that Dan has kindly, graciously taken his time, and I know we've got some East Coast folk here, so let's use this time for some Q&A. We've got Dan available here, so anyone who wants to ask him a question, go ahead and come off mute, and then we can get that going.
Yeah. Hey, and real quick, I just want to like, again, like sincerest thank yous for people. Like, I'm not that important, but for people to show up is like really cool. I was expecting like, you know, my sister and a few people, but it means, yeah, it's like, it's pretty cool. Like, I just hope that it helps somebody, but I really appreciate it. And thank you for you guys for having me.
I have a question. So first off, I really appreciate this and listening to your story because I really relate to it because I spent a lot of my time growing up in China. So I also went to an international school. And I remember like when I first got into sneakers, it wasn't such a big thing in all of Asia. But then after, I vividly remember this when the Seoul 3s released. I remember all of my Korean friends were all panicking. They all saved up money and they all were trying to get them. And that was just really crazy to me. So I wanted to ask you, like, how do you feel about like all of Asia really embracing this new kind of sneaker culture and how it's growing almost like to the level here in the US or anywhere else in the world?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's like so cool. Like it's the job that I have right now. So my current job at Nike, like our team's charter is to basically like create and cultivate sneaker culture in Asia Pacific. So not China, that's like a whole bigger team, but in like Korea, Japan, and so on and so forth. I think it's so cool. And I think there's so much potential. And I think there's so many consumers and sneakerheads that are like just thirsty for like authentic stories that really resonate with them. My one fear is that like, you know, like as to make sure that like we deliver on that promise, like that's like always like the thing that kind of keeps me up at night, because like I want to make sure that like we're telling authentic stories in a way that's just like that's worthy of the $150 that kid like saved up to buy. Because like, you know, like I ate ramen noodles for a week to save up for a pair of shoes. Like I kind of take that to heart in terms of like our team creating like that experience for like the kid that's like just getting into sneakers, and like creating a cool sneaker, not just because it's like expensive on resale or not just because it's like some collaborator did it, but it's because it's like a good shoe and there's like a story behind it. Yeah, somebody said something today like, you build memories in shoes, and I was like, that's cool. Like doesn't matter what shoe it is, but you build memories in shoes. So
yeah, thanks.
Hey Dan, by the way, you said if you can impact one person, just one person on the call. Andrew is a current sophomore at Lake Oswego High School, For
Oh,
those of you who
cool.
don't know, I'm the basketball coach there, and Andrew's probably one of 2 or 3 Asians in the entire program of 50 something. But yeah, thanks for coming on, Andrew. I hope you were inspired, and that's a very good question. I'm impressed.
That's awesome, man. Keep representing Asian ballers. There's not a ton of us out there, right?
That's right. That's right.
Appreciate that.
You should come play with like Carell,
Yeah.
JPAC, Tyson.
There you go.
Like, yeah,
There you go.
we're
Making
a
it
little
happen.
older,
See,
but
there you go, organizing again.
yeah, some of us still have some legs left. I don't, but some of us do.
That'll be a good matchup for you. A high school sophomore versus your waning years of pickup basketball career.
Yeah. I don't want that one. I don't want all that smoke.
Yeah.
All right, Dan, I got one for you, man.
What up, Kuzi?
Miss you, buddy.
Miss you, man.
This is awesome. I'm like so pumped that we're able to actually see your face. I can't wait to hug you at some point. And you know, once it's all over. I need like a good book or a good documentary from you. Sorry. You're good.
My things ran out of juice.
Oh yeah, you got me?
Yeah. Okay, sorry.
I need like a good book because I can just tell stories all day, and it's like my time spent with you is such a short window, and I'm sure all these people like have stories for days. But like, give me a good book or a good doc that you'd recommend. I'm in the market for a good book, good documentary series.
Oh, dude, I'm watching The Last Dance again for like the
Oh,
fourth
nice.
time.
Yeah, there you go. Actually, you know what? Have you seen?
No, actually, hey, there's a great doc. It's called In Search of Greatness.
Oh, the coaches.
Heard about it.
Yeah, it's on. I think the last time I saw it was on Amazon. And
Okay.
basically, they profile Wayne Gretzky, Michael Jordan, I believe. Anyway, like all these amazing, like world-class athletes, and they like really dig into like what makes them great.
Yeah.
It's awesome. Like
Nice.
It's so good. And it's really inspiring.
Adding that to the list, man.
Yeah.
Thank you.
It's a good one. Yeah, man.
Heck yeah.
Dan, I got one for you.
Yo.
Um,
Don't be shy, because when people don't ask questions, it's like, damn, was that boring as hell?
no, not at all, man.
I got time. My kid's down, so I got time.
So the 2023 FIBA World Cup is going to be in 3 Asian countries, Jakarta, Manila, and Tokyo. And so I was just kind of curious to hear about your thoughts on that, and if maybe that's been like conversations at Nike, and just, yeah, kind of your thoughts on the FIBA World Cup being in 3 Asian countries.
Dude, so to be honest with you, I didn't know that. Like my right now, my scope in my business is like very sportswear, which is like lifestyle. So I wasn't aware of that. I think that's so freaking cool, especially for Manila and Jakarta. Because I think like the next generation, or the next big generation of hoopers are there. Like those fans in Manila particularly love hoop. Like they love basketball, unlike anywhere else in the world. I think that's like an amazing opportunity. Like, yeah, I have so many thoughts on like Asian basketball. I think there's so much opportunity there. Like not just like NBA, like, but just for it to be more a part of like kids' lives. Cause like, you know, in Manila and Jakarta, it's like access to sport, which is like a big thing. But in like Japan and Korea, it's like access to sport, not from like a socioeconomic standpoint, but more so from like a social standpoint. Like your parents don't let you hoop. So I think like that's a role where Nike plays a huge, like we can play a huge role there, because we just have like such a big loud voice in terms of our marketing and like inspiring people. But like today I was watching the kid from Davison, who can hoop. Like he
got
really
game.
good. And then there's Rui Hachimura in Japan. And so like there's just, and then obviously there's Jeremy Lin. So like I think like the thing is like you just need kids to like be like, oh, I could do that. Like that kid like kind of looks like me. Like you just need that. You need more of that. And hopefully those tournaments going there will have the effect that like the dream team had on Europe, you know? And then like fast forward 15 years and you have, you know, the Ginobili's, the Dirks, the Tony Parkers of the world. And then now obviously you have like so many people there. Cause like, look at what the Carter, have you watched there's another documentary, The Carter Effect, about Vince Carter's effect on Canada basketball.
So good.
Like, yeah, it's insane. Like there's, now look at it, like Andrew Wiggins, like nothing, like Jamal Murray. There's so many great hoopers coming from Canada.
All right, hey Young, I have a question.
What's up, dude?
How's it going? I needed to, I know you're busy, so I need to make sure that I get some FaceTime with you. But just first, I just want to say this talk has been awesome. I think everything that you're saying, like you live out, like what you like, you walk the walk and you talk the talk. And you know, as like one of my first youngs, I think a lot of the things that I do to help other people, I learned from you. So anyway, just a question that I have in terms of like career. You know, are you always thinking about like your next step? And what do you do like if you are at a role where, you know, like you worked hard to get there, but you're not sure like what to do next?
Yeah. Hey, that means a lot. That what you said, it really means a lot. And I miss you.
Miss you too.
Yeah, like I think it depends. Like sometimes I'm thinking about what my next job or move will be, like a lot more, like more frequently. Like if I'm in a job that I don't really like my first role at Nike, I was thinking about it a lot. I'm not gonna lie. But like in my previous role and in my role now, like I'm not thinking about it at all. Like I think that's kind of in like now I have kind of like this leadership role where there's like a team. I think that's unfair to my team. Like I want to make sure like my team feels supported and I'm not like one foot out the door too. So like for me, especially in my job now, it's more so like making sure that like the team is developing, the team feels like they get like their shine, the team feels like they're growing. It's like less actually like when you're in like this type of role, at least this is how I approach this type of role, like these general manager roles, is it's not about like making these like tough decisions and like, it's about like, I don't know, I approach it. It's just about like uplifting your people. And then like being in a job that like, you know, like that you're not sure about. Like, it's funny because I think about like your Macy's job, like back in the day. And I know like but like generally speaking, like, you know, one of the things like I've been really fortunate. So I haven't had many instances where I have a job that I hate, but like, I think I think you should just be looking for jobs that you're really excited about, like that you really genuinely enjoy, because the work output is going to be better. Like I was sharing with like Daniel and Marshall, like I'm actually not like a innately hard worker. Like my wife is a hard worker. She just like grinds and she just loves it. Me, like I have to force myself to work hard, like in a lot of ways. And so like, that's a muscle that you like work on. Right. And I think it's like the less I have to force myself to work hard and the more like I'm passionate and I like love it, makes it easier. So like if you're not in a job that you like love or passionate about, then maybe it's like trying to find something that like you're a little bit more amped. Like
no, I think for me it's more like I love my job right now. It's just I don't know how to I don't know where to go from here. And I guess it's just because I love my job and I'm so focused on it right now. Like for me, future planning is like, where do I go?
Yeah. Let's take that one offline. We should probably just like catch up. I think again, like here's what I do sometimes in those instances that might help other people too, is like I take a step back and I think about like what I want to do, where I want to be in 10 years and then work backwards. And so like 10 years from now, you love your job now, but 10 years from now, like in your company, who do you want to be, or what type of job do you want, or like what type of family life do you want? Like people don't think about that enough, in my opinion. Like I didn't get to see my dad growing up,
right?
Because he worked so hard. And like, I was just like, I don't want to do that with my son. Like, I want to have good work-life balance. And so like, again, like thinking long-term, 10 years down the road, and then working backwards.
Cool. Thanks. Good seeing you.
Hey, Dan. So thank you so much for doing this. It's been awesome to hear from you and kind of catch up with what you've been doing lately. I'm just curious for you, like during COVID and like the lockdowns, like how you've been keeping inspired and connected to global markets, especially with your current role, and how you've just kind of kept your finger on the pulse of sportswear and just kind of culture in general, with not physically traveling.
Yeah. Hey, really good seeing you. It's been a long time.
Yeah.
Man, it's like, it's been hard. Honestly, like Instagram has been huge. Like we've been pushing a lot of our partners to like make sure that they have digital presence in terms of like sharing like what they need to be doing like on Instagram and storytelling on Instagram. And so like that's been a huge thing. And from a global, like just trying to stay creative and trying to stay like, you know, like on top of it, honestly, it's kind of been hard. I'm not gonna lie. It's been hard. Like I get so inspired by like just being around people and being in like in my previous role, all I dealt with wasn't the sneakers app. It was what we call neighborhood doors. And it's like the Kiths of the world, right? The Kiths undefeated, like the cool sneaker boutiques. And I always say like, you should walk into those types of doors and it should look, feel, it should have a vibe. And it's hard to get that vibe, you know, when you're not traveling. So it's been hard, but Instagram, like social media, that's like the way I've been trying to keep up. I know it's not like a cool answer, but it's just the truth.
No, yeah, that's helpful. Yeah, I was curious. Yeah, Instagram's been great for sure.
Hey Dan, thanks for sharing. I actually have two questions. As a designer myself, like there are times where you have design blocks and the slump, but how do you kind of get out of that when because like you do talk about sharing your stories and designing these shoes, but I'm sure you've gone through moments where you hit a wall and try to get out of that. So like, what are some ways you do get out of that?
Yeah. I do want to say like, I'm not a designer because if I say I'm a designer, that's like doing a disservice to the amazing, talented designers that we have like at Nike. Like designers like create shoes and I'm very quick to not call myself a designer. Like, I think like I'm just telling stories through shoes that like other people have designed. But like, it is a creative process. And I have gone through like creative blocks. Like the U of O Jordans is something I took over a few years ago. And it's the first time where I felt like there was like, I had to deliver every year. And I don't know how like real designers do it because like, it's kind of like a grind. For me, like just getting out and just seeing things, talking to people, going back into archives, traveling. Like I think nature has like beautiful colors and like getting colorways like that. I look at other products like I actually got to help out the design for the Justin Timberlake Man of the Woods Jordan 3. And actually the inspiration behind that design was a jacket from Sakai. It had like all these different textures and like I said, I like shopping and I like know like these brands. So like Celine, the women's bag company, has like this beautiful taupe colorway. And so like just taking inspiration from like those types of things, I think like is where I try to go.
Hey, Dan, I have a question and also wanted to thank you for sharing your story and your career and your highlights. Super meaningful. In terms of working with Tinker, obviously, he's the OG, he's a god of sneakers. What was that like for you? And what's kind of the thing that you took away from that whole experience?
Yeah. He's like, he's one of the most like gracious like people I've met. Like he's so like gracious with his time, his resources. Like he's such a nice guy. like you wouldn't think that he's like this like subculture god. Yeah, like what I really appreciate about him is I think he saw like my passion and maybe a little bit of an eye to like just give me a chance. And to give someone a chance like that doesn't happen often. So I just feel like really lucky in that. And one thing I always like tell people about Tinker is like, again, like he's just such a nice guy. He's so open. Like I was joking with Marshall and Daniel, like, cause they gave me crap about not bringing a guest. Like I'm pretty damn sure he would have came here if I asked him, like, unless he had some sort of conflict or PR told him no. The latter probably could have happened, but like, yeah, like he's just one of those guys that he's there for you if you need him. Like, and he's like, yeah, like he's been so instrumental in my career. Like, you know what I mean? If someone like that is like, oh, he knows what he's talking about, people listen. And he did that for me. So I wish I could give people a pair of the threes.
Yeah, there's a comment there. What do you think, Daniel? A couple more questions for Dan, and
Yeah.
put a capper to the night. I know you're on the roll here, Dan, but
No, we don't. Yeah.
great questions. Yeah.
I appreciate people just staying to the end too.
I mean, I've got a question. When you're talking about your story, you've talked a lot about, you know, hey, this person gave me an opportunity because they liked me, or, you know, you kept on going back to, hey, they like me. Of course, in the end, we've always got to be true to ourselves and be who we are. But what are some of the things, kind of practical things that you do, practical steps that you take so that likability factor can go up?
Yeah. I mean, to be honest, like some of it's just kind of a little bit of it is innate, but like I'll shout out somebody that's like left here. Like, so Kirill's a guy, like I met him playing basketball. The way he was playing basketball was just like, he kind of like, not only was he good, but like he like, you could tell that like he like was this like good guy, like a good human being. And then like, he didn't approach me like, yo, like you work at Nike, like, hey, this is me, like, can you help me out? He just kind of like, he was really organic about it. And like, I was drawn to him because he's like point guard and I'm like a point guard, and like he thinks the game, and I really respect that. Like, cause at his age, I wasn't thinking the game. And then like, we just started talking, and then like, you know, he had this like awesome internship at an RGA, where like one of the best agencies. And then like, he reached out, and I was like, dude, I'm so happy you reached out. Like, let's keep in touch. And like, we've kept in touch, and it was just really authentic. But the thing is, like, he just would check in to just check in. And it was like really genuine and authentic. And so for me, I'm like, it makes it so much easier. It's just like, it became, I don't know if you feel this way, Kirill, but it just became more than just like that. So it's just like, it became like a lot more natural. I think that's what people forget is like, everyone's human. Like, you don't want to just like be asking people for favors and be asking people for like help all the time. You know, like there's some really nice people that will like respond to that. But then I think like it's like kind of in and out. I think you should be thinking about not how many people you're trying to like get with, but like how deep you're going as well. And so, just be genuine. Like, don't just try to like use someone for like a job or an interview or what have you, you know? So.
Yeah, no, definitely. Shout out Corel, man. I see that right there.
It was that point
shout out
guard
the point guards.
So,
Point guard.
yeah.
Shout out the point guards.
Hey, it's true though. How you hoop and how you play sports, it shows a lot about your character, man. So it's definitely true.
Even when you get mad and you can't make a bucket and you start screaming at yourself.
Yeah.
I don't know what got over me. I kicked the ball that day too.
Oh.
I was very mad.
First time I've ever seen Dan lose his cool like that.
Yeah, I was very mad.
Dan, what's your game like? Like, what kind of point guard are you?
Oh man. I I don't know. What do you guys?
Corel,
Well,
you got
there's
something?
people like I've hooped with. I'm one.
I
Yeah.
have a
Actually,
scouting report actually. You
it's
gotta look
funny
it up.
because there's people all throughout my life. So there's people who've seen me when I was younger, and then there's people who see me now, and I'm kind of trash now.
Yeah, man. Dude, we haven't played in for I don't know how long, but straight like facilitator. Gotta love the pick and roll. He'll get the ball to you, just dive, dive to the hoop. But yo, to your point, somebody said it earlier, but like I can totally attest to that old guy that Dan was talking about in the beginning. Because there was kind of a similar story to me, not all that, but like I guarantee you, and I know this because I've talked to him about just like personally, but I guarantee you he saw Dan play on the court and was like, I gotta talk to that guy. Like he's setting picks, he's hustling, you know what I mean? He's coaching people through it, and he as a guy, as a CEO who's grown a business, is like, that's exactly who I need on my team. And so I think it's so true what you guys are saying. And it's just crazy how, a game that we all love can have that ripple effect,
Yeah. No, Cruz, actually, Don told me that. So the old CEO, his name's Don. He told me that before I moved out to Asia. He goes, hey, when I knew you were a leader is when I saw you barking at people who are like better than you, but like everyone was like respected your voice on the court,
Totally.
listening. Yeah. Like I wasn't the best player for sure, because like there's so many
guy on the court, dude.
Yeah, exactly.
Still doesn't matter. It didn't matter.
Yeah. But
They listened to you, Dan, because they knew that they would get paid, they would get shots, right? I think that to just sum up this tonight, it's just awesome to meet a lot of new faces as well, and you could just see the Chung, you could see the what's our Chung, like the love and the affection, the loyalty, all of that just come out from the old friends to new friends to I literally have a scouting report from Dan's business school classmate who's also a mutual friend of ours, and says I think there's a slight exaggeration. Sunwoo, literally the greatest pick and roll PG in the game. Thread to drive, nail the three, hit the roll on the double. He has been prone to drive and split the double, nail the three on the double, hit the roll really open because first two options are high. Like this, like the lore of Dan's game, obviously, is 200%, but it's clear just from everybody just sticking around for 2 hours and the smiles that we see on people's faces. Man, we're just grateful for you. Can't wait for us to get on the court. All the non-Portland people, please come out, visit us. Nike campus, Lake Oswego High School. Let's go. Let's get some shots up.
It's on.
Dan, yeah, we'll go to my brother's restaurant. We'll have a big party, and how about that, Dan? Huh?
I love it.
We'll talk North Korea. Part of, just to cap it up, Kimchi Express caught my eye. So just again, I'm a high school basketball coach. Been doing this for a little bit, but what Daniel Chun here has started with Kimchi Express, this team, one of their missions was to support liberty in North Korea. And just for us, we have our Han, we have our, we live in one of the few, we are of people who, our parents are still, our grandparents, some of them are divided. And so there is this, desire for us to use our Korean identity, use our story and background to uplift the next generation. And that might be basketball, that might be kicks, that might be, diplomacy down the line. But we just really appreciate everyone's time, and thank you so much, Dan. We're so proud of you.
Thanks, Dan.
Yeah, thank you, Dan. Hey, one last question before we break off here. One last question that we ask every one of our guests. Favorite kimchi, go.
Gochori kimchi. My mother-in-law's here right now, and she makes bomb gochori kimchi. Oh my gosh. Yeah.
You've got to educate me on that type of kimchi. Which one was that one again? I'm sorry.
Oh,
sorry.
I'm gonna send you a picture.
We were about to go out on a bang. Now we got to bring it out. Yeah.
I'm gonna send you a picture. Hey, I really appreciate everybody. Yeah, like even you guys, Daniel and Marshall, asking me, I'm like, okay, who am I? Like, okay, like maybe I can help somebody. And then like people who I've tried to help a little bit along the way all throughout my life, like people showing up here is like pretty cool. It's pretty cool. And people I've met for the first time, that's like super duper cool. Appreciate it.